Hello all, I'm Colette and welcome to my channel Witch Ways. I've been practicing for about 50 years and today I want to share with you 10 unusual tips for witchcraft, some of my thoughts about them that are based on my recent experiences. It's a little bit more personal, behind the scenes, look at my magic and how I work magically with what life sends to me. I hope it inspires and enhances your magical journey. Let's jump in. My first tip is to always be open to creating something new, especially if you have a tiny bit of experience. We all have backgrounds in witchcraft and folk magic within our own lived experience. And this is how I created a new spell recently. A student brought a jar of those fluffy blown dandelion seed heads that are round and white and very fluffy. And she brought them to represent air. And I thought to myself, that seems kind of cool. And that image really stuck in my head and eventually a spell came to me. I thought, oh, blowing dandelions, blowing wishes, let's turn it into a wish jar. So I took some dandelion heads that had opened up and were all white and fluffy, put them in a jar, and now when I want to make a wish, I hold the jar and imagine my wish going out through the jar, out to where it needs to go. If I was making a really large wish, I would open the lid, shake the jar, and let the wind or breeze take my wish away along with the seed heads. My second tip is to make sure that you have a flat, clean surface near where all your supplies are. That makes it a lot simpler to put a spell together. If you don't have some free space available and you have to go get all your supplies out of the cupboard and take them somewhere else and then put them all back, you're much less likely to do a simple spell when you need one. In my life, one of the things that I'm currently doing is both magical and mundane. I am almost done dealing with the legal issues around my brother's death. And so what that means is that I can take away all the huge plastic bins that were filled with paperwork, and there are a lot of them, and get them off my kitchen counters because that's the only safe place I could protect them from my cat. And so I took them away and now I have a nice clean space on my kitchen counters where I can work. And I really like to keep a lot of my witchcraft supplies in the kitchen because there's a sink nearby, there's almost always jars, my herbs are there, and I have counter space to do the magic. And the back door is close by so I can just duck out quickly if I need a little extra plant material or some rocks or something like that. I create most of my spells on plates or trays so that I can move them elsewhere if I need to, if they need to go on an altar or some other different part of the house than the kitchen. So tip number 3 is about honing in on getting exactly the right group of spirit helpers to help you, especially when you're working with ancestors. First of all, we want to call the whole and healthy ancestors who have crossed well. And then secondly, it's important to remember that while all ancestors' job in the spirit world is to help their descendants survive and thrive, you can specify what group of ancestors you want to work with, especially if you know a little bit about their history, background, where they came from. So for instance, you can call on groups of ancestors that were farmers when you're doing magic about gardening or food abundance. You can call on ancestors who were warriors for protection. You can call on any ancestors that worked with equity in any way, that were maybe abolitionists or suffragettes, if you're lucky enough to know something like that about them. An example of this is that I still have a little bit to do legally around my brother's death, and so I decided to call on a certain grouping of Scottish ancestors to help for a speedy and efficient closure to that part of the process. And I called on them because they were really badass protectors and believed in fierce and quick justice. I've gone through several bottles of whiskey, which is what they want, and every time there's a big part of the project that is completed or I enter a new phase, I give them a really large offering, like maybe a whole bottle of whiskey as an offering. And I check in to see if anything's changed, if I need to do anything different, or if they want to do something different for me. Tip number 4 is to use what is currently available to you. So I feel a lot of ghost-like energy around my brother's death, and he totally passed over. I'm not sure he's entirely at peace on the other side, but his death was really messy, and a lot of really uncomfortable feeling spirits were really drawn to the energy of that. And so fortunately, right now, lilacs are in full bloom, and they are specific for getting rid of ghosts and repelling yucky spirits, disturbed spirits that are hanging around. Early New Englanders would plant lots of them in their yards to protect themselves from bad magic and ghosts and evil spirits. So this has been really helpful for me, and I'm bringing in as many lilacs as I can while still leaving plenty on the bush to just have around my house in various liminal spots. I've been liking lately to take it a step further and take a small craft mirror that you can get from a hobby store. They're usually pretty inexpensive, and they come without a rim of any kind. And so I just set them down and I ward them by taking water and drawing a pentacle and a circle around them to make sure that that mirror stays protected and warded. And then I place my vases of lilacs on top of that. And that's working really well. And that's helping to repel any energy associated with my brother's death. I want to share, if you're drawn to something, even if you don't know what it is, respectfully harvest it if that feels right, make an offering, and do some research later. Then once I've done my research, I just wait until the object tells me how it wants to be used. And I do a lot of that intuitively. The first way I usually do that is when I'm setting up an altar, if the thing that I've gathered feels like it wants to be on the altar, and the research that I've done confirms that it might be good for the magic that I'm doing, then I'll put it on that altar. And that's how I'll start to work with things. For example, in the winter of 23, on a very cold, frosty night, I felt strongly called to create a white violet flower full moon essence under the night sky. Then a year later, what I see now is that it's helped me connect much more strongly with the Nordic rune Isa, which is ice. It's also helped me really understand on a more body, heartfelt level the magic and power of ice and snow spirits. I wanted to share that, like most witches, I don't do spells every day, and it's not all glamorous and pretty. Sometimes it's just really quick, down and dirty. But because I've been a witch for so long, I like to try and think about, feel, or sense, or notice the magic around me every day, at least once a day, and then incorporate some small practices. I think doing small things around your house that take really minimal effort can be a big part of helping your practice grow over time and become a real part of your life that supports you. I personally really notice a difference even when I just make sure that I offer a glass of water to some spirits that have helped me every day. Recently, I had a really wonderful bit of time picking violets at a good friend of mine's house, and I made them into a violet cordial, and I've been using it as an offering. And I like violet cordial as offering because it feels really personal. Violets are my birth flower because I was born in February, and also my mother used to get me little bunches of violet flowers and put them in a special vase for me that I got to keep on my shelf away from my younger siblings. And these violets in particular were extra special because I gathered them from a friend's yard. And so I feel like this cordial is a very personal thing, and it offers part of my life, part of my heart, part of my memories as an offering. And I really like that as a way of developing a deeper relationship with the spirit beings I'm giving offerings to. In the human world, if one person is putting in all the effort and is overextended, it's not going to go well in the end. And it's the same way with spirits and the earth around us. Being busy and living in a Western culture, I'll admit I'm not perfect about this. But recently I had a chance to do some really nice reciprocity around a very special magical gift. This month, I got to do a really wonderful trade to get these fantastic deer bones and a geode that was included with them as a gift. And so it was really lovely to do a trade with the human that gave them to me. Thank you very much, Juniper. And I also, before I work with these objects, I will offer them some water and anything else I feel like they might want, and give them a little attention before I start using them magically to make sure I am respecting them and giving reciprocity to the spirits and magic that resides in those bones in that rock. I really like having bones on my altar and using them to call on various spirits for help, or to use them to represent the underworld or death, or the darker side of things, or the deeper side of things. And I also like them to help me call in the spirits of various animals. These particular bones feel especially magical, and I'm really excited to see how they want to be used, because I find that every bone I gather, even if it's from the same kind of animal, wants to be used a little differently, wants to mean something a little different. And sometimes that's the circumstances that they came to me under. Creating things to add to your spells can sometimes unexpectedly change your approach to magic. One of the great things about doing Patreon and YouTube is I've started going back to doing a lot more kind of crafty things. And even after 50 years of doing magic, I find that just shifting that a little bit has opened up whole new avenues and perceptions about the way magic works. So I want to thank you all for inspiring me to do that. One of the things that I'm launching into crafting that's new to me is to create magical inks to use in my spells and sigils. And I think that for early summer, I want to make some berry inks. I think I'm going to start with strawberry, which gives a very pale, almost watercolor texture to the ink, and I want to play with that. And maybe I'll add some sweet woodruff to it. Then just before Samhain, I want to take some water from a rust garden and grind up some acorns and make some acorn ink to use in my Samhain spells. My thoughts about this kind of project is that for busy witches, it doesn't work to constantly craft things. So pick a few things that you're really likely to use, because if you have them around, over time, it will help you to feel when you need a little something extra to make that spell feel complete and work. When we do magic, we go into it with a specific intention and a desired outcome in mind, and that's good. That's what you want. But every once in a while, the magic will offer you a gift, a little something extra, or take an unexpected turn. And that happened to me when I did the spell about spring renewal and release that I put on my Patreon page. So anyway, I did this spell and I made the offering of the spring renewal cordial. After I did the spell, my spirit folks suggested that I take a spoonful of the cordial daily to help bring some creativity into my life and to more fully embody that magic of renewal. If you found these tips useful, I would love it if you put in the comments which one you're most interested in or which one you think might be most helpful for you. As always, I'd appreciate it if you consider subscribing to Patreon, and I am always so appreciative and grateful for those of you who consistently like, who have already subscribed, and let me know that they appreciate my videos. It really helps a lot. So until next time, stay safe and be well.